Senior!
Yes! The center back, Jacob Glesnes, is going for it. Oh my God! What a goal!
And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello, welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. Well, finally, we have seen the Philadelphia Union pick up the first win of the MLS season. And like I said last episode with Tyler Terrence, both us and the Chicago Fire would say, yeah, this Saturday, that this is when the real MLS season starts. And us Union fans, we got to feel really happy because, look, we've been saying the last couple of weeks that we've been focusing on CCL play. What we've done in the league doesn't matter. And we pick up our first win this Saturday against the Chicago Fire. We go again this Wednesday night at 7:30 at the Sub, playing yet again the New England Revolution, which I'm not excited to see that game because we saw them 6 times last season, and now we see them 3 more times this season, which is a total of 9 times in 2 years. It's just unbelievable. Like, that's ridiculous to see the same team 9 times in 2 years. And we could potentially, playoffs is a long way away, but you could potentially see them in the playoffs. Like, I'm so tired of seeing New England. Like, these two teams, we obviously know that they know each other really, really well. But we're not here to talk about the New England game yet. We will see if I can get a guest on before that game on Wednesday. It sucks, last year, I talked about this with a couple of the guys I had on the podcast saying, basically, the games are coming thick and fast, and, well, we see that happen this week with us getting done playing Chicago on Saturday. Then we play again on Wednesday against the New England Revolution, and then we go again Saturday against the New York Red Bulls. But then I was also looking at the schedule, which is crazy because after that Red Bull game on Saturday, we have 2 more games left of May, and we don't play again after we play Portland May 30th. Until June 20th, which is the Atlanta game. And hopefully a lot of fans go down for that game against Atlanta. I know myself, my sister's going down. Ricky Zelfro, a friend of the pod, has been on a couple times. I believe he said he's going down. So hopefully we get a lot of Union fans going down for that game. And it seems like the Atlanta fans really, really, really want to be rivals with the Philadelphia Union really bad because they accuse us of diving. They say we don't play soccer the right way. I mean, they're still butthurt. You can go on Twitter and see these guys still complaining about the Philadelphia Union. It's like, yeah, we're really, really, really living in your head, aren't we? But yeah, let's not talk about the upcoming games and everything. Like I said, we will focus on the Chicago Fire game. But before we do that, let's go straight into the news. So yeah, some of these points might be old news that I'm bringing up, but I haven't done a news segment in a couple episodes. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the latest news in MLS, starting with Toronto FC. They've made 2 signings, starting with left back Kemar Lawrence. They signed him from Anderlecht. The club announced on Friday that the Jamaican international signed a contract through 2024. Now, you guys might remember Kemar Lawrence because he was a longtime New York Red Bull player. Really good left back, too, for the Red Bull. And I think it's funny. The Red Bull got nothing for Kemar Lawrence when he left them on a free to go to Anderlecht. And after a year, a little bit over a year, Kemar says, yeah, I'm done in Belgium. And now he's joining Toronto. And look, this is great. One of the Red Bull's best players, I'd say, the last couple of years. And he leaves on a free. Now he comes back to MLS. Doesn't even go back to New York Red Bulls. I don't even know if the Red Bulls put in an offer to get Kemar Lawrence, but regardless, yeah, he's back in MLS and not with New York Red Bulls. He's with Toronto, and Toronto have picked up a really, really good left back. And it is funny too, right? When I did my MLS predictions, where did I put Toronto? I think second or third, and I'm sure a lot of people were like, "Are you serious? Like, Toronto, you think they're going to finish that high?" Where I looked at so many other people that did predictions, and Toronto, people had them around 4, 5, or 6. And yeah, I was feeling good about Toronto finishing either second or third just because they played well last year. They kept the majority of the roster intact. Yeah, they lost Greg Vanney, who, by the way, is doing a phenomenal job in Carson for the LA Galaxy. He's maybe the best offseason signing that any team could have made in MLS. Leon Flock might have something to say about that, but it seems like everything is going well for LA Galaxy. They're playing very, very well, and we saw Toronto lose yesterday to the New York Red Bulls with Chris Amers, his old team, getting the best of them. And yeah, I guess that was a head scratcher for a lot of Toronto fans, a lot of fans of MLS. Like, why would you get Chris Amers when it wasn't great for the Red Bulls? But yeah, I was buying into it that, they played so well, kept most of the roster intact, and now they go out and sign Kemar Lawrence. And then they also announced that they signed Venezuelan left winger Yeferson Soteldo from Santos FC for a fee of $6.5 million. This guy's small like Javinko, and I don't know, did they find their Javinko replacement? Maybe not. I mean, they play two different positions, but this guy was thought highly of at Santos. He's thought highly of for the Venezuelan national team, and he wanted a new challenge, and he said, yeah, when he was at Santos, said he would love to play for Toronto. He was ready to move on, and we've seen Toronto just over the years have a lot of success, and it is going to be interesting, right? I know Toronto is not playing in Canada right now. They're playing down in Florida, but usually when you sign those South American players and, the farther north you go, it gets colder. Now, I know Toronto is right there on the U.S.-Canadian border, so it's not that far up north, but still, these South Americans, how are they going to fare in colder weather? I know Jose Martinez did an interview. Somebody interviewed him a couple weeks ago, and his agent told him, yeah, you need to leave South America basically to further your career. I know he said he had offers in Argentina, but his agent said, "No, just get out of South America completely. You need to go to MLS. There's a good team that wants you in MLS, which was the Philadelphia Union." And he said one of the things that made him uneasy about coming to Philadelphia is how cold it gets. He was not looking forward to the weather. And yeah, it makes sense where these players coming out of South America are just used to weather in the 80s, in the 70s, basically year round, where it doesn't snow. And yeah, here comes Jose Martinez dealing with weather in the 30s, dealing with snow. And look, Yeferson could potentially deal with the same thing for Toronto, but nonetheless, that's two huge signings for Toronto. And with these two signings, maybe they'll make my prediction of either second or third look a lot better than what it sounded like at the time. But let's go ahead to point number 3. So according to Julia Poe, the Wilf family, who owns the Minnesota Vikings in the NFL, they are apparently close to buying Orlando City for a price between $400 to $500 million, which is so crazy. The De Silva family down in Orlando, I know there's been talks the last couple of years that they were interested in selling Orlando. I believe when Orlando came into the league, they paid an expansion fee of what? I think it was $70 million. I have to go back and double check, but I believe it was $70 million. And when you look at the expansion fees now for Charlotte, it's what? $350 million? It's insane to see. Look, I still consider Orlando a newish team. And when De Silva finally decides to sell that team, yeah, he's going to make a good amount of money back for that team. And look, I know there's the joke. Well, let's see if the Wilf family can have better success with another purple team, because, things aren't looking great for the Vikings in the NFL. I know in the past, they've showed some promise, but yeah, it hasn't been as good as probably Minnesota Viking fans would have hoped. And now we've seen Orlando City the last 2 years play really, really well in MLS. It seems like after them struggling for so much that they finally have an idea how they want to play. They have a good coach in Oscar Pereira. They have good players now. I have a passionate fan base, have a beautiful stadium, and things are coming along nicely for Orlando. Now it's just about getting over the hump, getting into the MLS Cup final. And I know U.S. Open Cup's not around this year because of COVID, but you've got to imagine that course, that's a competition next year that Orlando City gotta think that they have a real possible chance of winning. So yeah, the Wilf family looks like they are going to be buying Orlando City, and for those Orlando City fans out there, hopefully that the success at the club can continue, unlike what is happening for the Minnesota Vikings. But let's go ahead and move on to what is just been breaking news yesterday. So, yeah, I tried to go live on Spaces, but I guess the time that I decided to go live on Spaces probably wasn't the best time, at 3 o'clock on a Saturday when people were like, yeah, there's a great time to watch a Union game at 1 o'clock because now I still have so much of my day left to do. So, yeah, I was like, nobody's really joining. So, yeah, duly noted, where if the Union play an away game in the middle of the day, it's probably not best to go live on Spaces at that time. Maybe around 7, 8 o'clock at night, I feel like would be a good time to go live. So we'll try that again the next time the Union have an away game, because I want to make that just a tradition. Just have you guys come on the podcast, give your thoughts about the Union game, any MLS news that's breaking, and it's a blast. We had a blast talking last episode with just everybody that tuned in when we talked right after that Atlanta United win down in Atlanta. But moving on to what is the hottest topic right now, I'd say, in MLS, which is the latest breaking news in MLS, is apparently the Columbus Crew have registered the name Columbus SC, sparking a potential rebrand, with more information becoming available later this week. Now, I use the words potential rebrand because, look, who knows what this really means? It does look pretty likely that Columbus is going to be changing their name from the Columbus Crew to Columbus SC. And honestly, I'm shocked for words, honestly, where, look, yeah, this is a Philadelphia Union podcast. This is people that are fans of the Philadelphia Union, but I think we can all agree that when you have an original team like the Columbus Crew, where that name's been around for so long, where that team got saved by the fans, where that team was going to leave Columbus, that team was going to go down and become Austin FC until the fans really stepped up, did the part, got the Haslams to buy the team from Peacock Court. And, I can't believe this, where the fans are like, yes, we finally did something good, where the Crew look like they're saved. Yeah, they're saved. They've stayed in Columbus. They're getting a brand new stadium. But then for the information to break that Columbus Crew register the name Columbus SC, now there's pictures coming up on Twitter what this new logo can look like. I'm looking at it. I'll try my best to describe it. It basically says Columbus on the top, SC at the bottom of this logo, and the logo is a yellow, like it looks like a flag, an upside down flag, and then a giant C in the middle. Columbus SC. I don't know what the obsession is with MLS, with Don Garber, the people in the higher ups of MLS, with making everything in MLS European. Don't we have enough Uniteds? Don't we have enough FCs, SCs? And to take a historic team like the Columbus Crew and make them Columbus SC, it just baffles my mind. It really does. Where, like I was saying earlier, yeah, we're Philadelphia Union fans, but in my opinion, I think the Columbus Crew's logo, what it is right now, is one of the best logos in MLS. I might be biased and say that the Philadelphia Unions is the best because it is a sweet logo. I think Minnesota United also have a really nice logo. But Columbus Crew, yeah. I'd put it up there and say that they have one of the best, maybe the best logo in MLS. And for them to change the Crew name, where, look, the fans are going to have to save the Crew again. I mean, they're going to have to protest and say, look, don't change our name. And who knows if that's going to be enough this time. I mean, I don't know. I know I should be saying a lot more than what I'm saying right now, but I don't know. Whatever MLS's obsession is with trying to make MLS European, they've got to knock it off. And there's a comment by somebody on r/MLS on the thread about this whole thing, where this guy said they've not registered any brand. Last registration trademark by MLS was a decal that says "Bring the Fight" at the end of April. This is all linked to who is lookup that shows MLS owns the domain ColumbusSC.com and has owned it since 2017 through a brand protection company that specializes in registered website domains near related to your brand to prevent bad actors from getting them. So this guy, I guess, is trying to take the higher road and saying, look, maybe they're just trying to register this brand so nobody can take it. But I don't know. Who knows? Who knows if this is going to be a rebrand? That's why I said a potential. But we're supposed to get more information on this later this week, and I know, I really did, and just struggle with finding words because look, a lot of people I feel like are the same way on Twitter, especially Columbus fans, not really knowing what to say. Like, just stop. Just stop already. I think that's what makes the Philadelphia Union unique. That's what makes Columbus Crew unique. New England Revolution unique. They don't have a United at the end of the name. They don't have an FC, an SC. We saw the whole mess with the Montreal rebrand, where they got rid of the Impact. Why? Just so they can go with a SC. It's so stupid. I don't know. I don't agree with it, and I guess once we get more information later this week, then I have more to say. But it's not good, right? It's not good, and I'm hoping that it's just a trademark that somebody else can't take this name, but we shall see. But I do want to get to two other pieces. One, real quick, which is FC Cincinnati. They signed goalkeeper Kenneth Vermeer, the ex-LAFC goalkeeper. I don't really know why they signed a goalkeeper when I thought Titan looked really well against Nashville. He's not the reason that they drew that game 2-2. They're terrible defensively. And here they go against a goalie that's kept one clean sheet, I believe, in 15 games for LAFC. Not good at all. Dude concedes a lot of goals. Us Union fans, like I talked about when LAFC released him, Jacob Glesnes scored a great goal against Vermeer. And here goes Cincinnati wasting an international roster spot on a goalkeeper where they have two goalkeepers on the roster that aren't great, but Vermeer, I think, is definitely a lot worse than Titan. So, hey, look, it's not our problem. And I just think it's really funny that Cincinnati fans thought that, they go out and make all these signings. You guys have heard me talk about this where, it looks like they won the Super Bowl. It looks like they won MLS Cup on the paper, but until those players get together, it doesn't mean anything. And this isn't FIFA. But the last thing that I do want to talk about that is in relation to the Columbus Crew again is, should MLS increase the salary cap? Now, I'm going to play this clip from Caleb Porter with his comments after Monterrey knocked Columbus out of CCL play last week. Now, like I said earlier, I'm bringing up old news, but this did get me thinking. And Caleb Porter, basically in this clip, was talking about the players that Monterrey were able to bring off the bench. And he was talking about, I don't really think his point was too much about these players coming off the bench from Monterrey. But because of that, it started this debate on social media about, should MLS increase the salary cap to compete with the Cruz Azules, the Monterreys, the Club Americas that are still left in the competition? But Caleb's whole point was just talking about how, like, we see MLS teams go out so early because these Mexican teams are almost towards playoff times in the league, and MLS is just starting. So that's what Caleb made the point about in this clip. But then fans took it the other way when they heard him talking about the players that Monterrey were able to bring off the bench.
You know, I think it's pretty telling in that second half. They sub on Hurtado, Kranovitter, Pabon, and Funes Mori, 4 guys that would start on any team in MLS. And we have to sub on a couple guys that have hardly played, a couple academy guys, draft pick, and those guys did their best. But we had to do that because we had some guys that just aren't capable of playing, 90 minutes in this type of window. And it becomes very tricky. So really the end of the game was about us trying to manage and not get injured. And unfortunately, with the way this early part of the competition set up, which is why it's so difficult for the MLS teams, it's very tricky.
Okay, yeah, so it does seem like Caleb Porter is crying. He brings up a good point, right? We've talked about this, not on this podcast, but people have talked about this on Twitter a lot, where how it is kind of unfair for MLS to start this competition before the season even starts for MLS, where these teams in Mexico, wherever, are near the end of their seasons, getting ready for the playoffs. So they're already fit. They've played multiple games where MLS teams haven't played at all. And we've heard the argument in the past how it's unfair and everything, how maybe MLS and Liga MX should somehow get their schedules to align so Liga MX teams aren't going in with such an advantage. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about what everybody's talking about on social media. It's, like I said, it's about, should MLS increase the salary cap? And since the Philadelphia Union are playing Club America next, I decided to look up some of the players that Club America has bought the last couple of years, what their transfer fees look like. I got this information on transfermarket.us. Now, granted, it's pretty accurate, but at times I'd say it's not accurate, but they are pretty good for a lot of information. So I'm looking at 2 of their center backs right here. Bruno Valdez, they paid $3.4 million for him. Sebastian Carrasas, they paid $2.5 million for him. Pedro Aquino, center defensive midfielder, they paid $3.8 million for him. Another center midfielder, Richard Sanchez, they paid $7 million for him. Nicholas Benedetti, an attacking midfielder, they paid $5.7 million for him. And then Roger Martinez, a striker, they paid $9 million for him. Now, they have a couple other guys that I could have brought up, but look, those players, especially $9 million, you hardly see MLS teams pay $9 million for a DP player. And this, it is a good argument to be had, because how can MLS teams compete with Liga MX teams where, yes, we know a lot of times they are overspending to bring in players into Liga MX. But regardless, they're spending the money. They're spending more money on players than what your typical MLS teams play. I mean, these 6 players that I just named, all 6 of them would be DP level players with how much money that they paid to get them. And we know in MLS, you can only have 3 DP players. So how is it fair for a team to have 6 or more DP level players? How is it fair for an MLS team to compete against that? And granted, I think out of all the teams that were represented by MLS in CCL, I do think the Philadelphia Union, I'm not just saying this because the Philadelphia Union are still in the competition and people are probably saying, yeah, you are. But we've seen the Union under Ernst Tenner have signed really, really good players that are TAM level players, yes, but they don't play like TAM level players. I think they play better. And I think a lot of teams in MLS could take a note for how the Philadelphia Union do things, how Ernst Tenner does things. And so I think the way that Ernst Tenner built the Union's roster was better than the way that all the other MLS teams' roster was built. I think, how do you increase the salary cap, really? I think there's 4 points. One, I think there should be a minimum that teams have to spend. Look, because if you increase the salary cap, you're still going to run into your Real Salt Lakes. You're going to run into your Philadelphia Union, where they're just not going to pay money. Look, we're doing the minimum. And I wouldn't even say we're doing the minimum, where we don't even have to sign a DP player. We have one on the roster. We have 2 spots open, with Jameer Montero being the only player. But I think there should, the way that you stop teams from not spending money is you set a minimum, like it is in the NFL. You say, look, okay, you don't want to spend up to this amount of money, fine. But you have to spend this amount of money to compete. And so I think if MLS sets that, I think MLS teams in CCL play can become more competitive. Like I said, you should still have a salary cap, but it's got to be raised where teams can sign players like Club America have, like Cruz Azul has. Because look, I think the one thing that MLS is afraid of is if you got rid of DPs, then there would be a lot of DPs going to LA Galaxy, going to Atlanta United, LAFC, going to New York Red Bulls, into Miami, New York City, not New York Red Bulls. We know they don't spend a ton of money. But yeah, I mean, I can see that the league is afraid that, okay, that these teams would stop investing into their academy. They would just go out and keep signing DP players because they have money. So I do think if you set a minimum that the union would have to spend some kind of money, there should still be a salary cap in play. And there should be no DP limit, in my opinion. Because, look, I think teams should be able to spend money if they have money, but it should be in a salary cap, and there should be a minimum set like the NFL. I think that's how you still keep MLS competitive, because they don't want to see your LA Galaxy, LAFCs, Atlanta Uniteds, into Miami's just spending, winning MLS Cup every single year. Now, granted, they probably do want to see those teams in the final every year because it's great for revenue, it's great for reviews on TV, but the way that you keep things competitive is by having that salary cap. I'm all for the salary cap, but I think it should be risen significantly. And you've got to say, look, you don't want to spend the maximum in the salary cap, that's fine. But you've got to at least spend this minimum. I don't know what the minimum should be. Maybe you guys have a number in mind. But I think that is one way to become more competitive in CCL play. I don't... Look, we can get into this discussion about, okay, well, how do we get Liga MX and MLS to have the same schedule? I'm not even at the point where I want to have that debate. I'm at the point where I want to have the debate, look, let's raise the salary cap in MLS. Let's get rid of the DP limits. Let's put a minimum that teams have to spend. And I think you'll see a better product on the field. Now, granted, the Philadelphia Union might do the minimum still and only have one DP player on the roster. But when you throw that minimum in there, telling teams you've got to spend the money, you don't spend the money, then sell your team. I think that's a pretty good incentive, but I think we're a long way from those kind of threats. Who knows how far we are away from MLS increasing the salary cap. I don't think MLS would say, okay, no DP limit, but I think it's very doable. You set that salary cap, then you can determine how many DPs you have on your roster or not. And I think, obviously, you still have teams like the Philadelphia Union giving youth a chance because this is how the team's built, on youth in the academy. We know this. We saw Jack McGlynn against Chicago play really, really, really well. But yeah, that's my thoughts. That's probably a little bit longer than what I wanted to spend talking about the news and everything. But I don't know. You guys let me know your thoughts on Twitter about should MLS increase the salary cap? How would you guys go about that? Should there be a minimum teams have to spend like the NFL? That are my thoughts on how to make MLS teams more competitive in CCL play. But let's go ahead and talk about the Chicago Fire versus Philadelphia Union game. So as we know, the Chicago Fire lost to the Union 2-0. The Union, like I said in the intro, they picked up the first win of the MLS season, and they also picked up their first win in Chicago since July of 2018. I thought the first 5 to 8 minutes started brightly for the Union, with Mbaizo causing all sorts of problems down the right side for the Union. I thought Bornstein didn't have an answer at all for Mbaizo. Mbaizo was able to just put great service in the box for Corey Burke on a couple of occasions. Jack McGlynn. Dude had 2 excellent chances in his first MLS start. Kasper Schmelker played an excellent dummy for the ball to find Jack McGlynn for a second shot. Yeah, Jack probably should have scored at least one of those shots, if not both. I know he said in his post-game press conference he's going to have a hard time sleeping because he should have had 2 goals. And yeah, he should have, but I thought he looked really, really well, and we'll talk a little bit more about Jack McGlynn here in a little bit. I thought Corey Burke and Kasper Schmelker, they paired well with each other. Unlike what we saw down in Atlanta where they were making the same runs, they were both in the same spot multiple times. They just did not look good playing with each other, and they played well. What I noticed was Kasper, which I hate, is when Kasper is going out wide, sending in service into the box, Kasper should be the one getting that service. It didn't happen all the time, which is good, but he was finding Corey Burke with good crosses. I know Corey Burke went out wide a couple of times too and put good service into the box. So when you are forced to put your strikers out wide, especially like Corey Burke and Kasper Schmelker, where these guys are more so target men, to see them putting good service in the box, really good. So I had nothing to complain about with the Corey Burke and Kasper Schmelker pairing. There's guys, the more they play with each other, the better that communication, the better the runs are going to be. So it was a good surprise to see how bad they played against Atlanta and Atlanta to how well they played together against Chicago. I thought Andre Blake looked great in this game, especially near the end of the game where he made a massive save where, if Chicago would have scored, it wouldn't have mattered. Game would have ended 2-1 in the Union's favor still, but to keep a clean sheet, to have that awareness until the very last minute, great on Andre Blake, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. I just thought that the Union overall played well against Chicago, where, Chicago at the end of the day had more possession, and we know possession doesn't really matter all the time in soccer. Possession's a stat where you can't buy too much into because, Chicago had 60% of the possession, but yet they lost this game 2-0. So the Union were good in their chances, and the one thing I do like about MLS is if you guys are into stats, if you guys are into analytics, anything like that, MLS has done a really good job in redesigning their website where they put up a lot of useful stats on their chalkboard. If you just go into MLSsoccer.com, you can find all this stuff out. It's really, really useful, like I said. And what I like is they have a passing chart that shows, like, okay, what player passed for, which player passed back, where did this pass go and everything. But the one thing that I was talking about possession is if you go on here and look at the possession stats, yes, Chicago dominated in possession. But when you look at the possession that the Union had, that's when all the pressure was on Chicago. That's when the Union were scoring their goals. That's when the Union created most of their chances in like 5-minute intervals. And then they're like, okay, well, nothing happened. Here's Chicago. Take the ball. And Chicago does nothing about it. So, props to MLS when I was just bashing them about this potential Columbus Crew rebrand. The Union just overall, I thought they did really, really well in this game. I thought some good points. And like I said, we'll talk about Jack McGlynn here in a second. But point number one I want to bring up, we've seen plenty of times this season where the Union create a ton of chances, and again, they aren't able to finish them, which was the case in the first half as the Union had 9 shots and only 1 on target, which was saved brilliantly by Shuttleworth. In the second half, the Union were a lot more clinical in their finishing. Oh, yeah, by the way, Shuttleworth. How many people at home were singing What's a Shuttleworth, What's a Shuttleworth? Or just singing any Sons of Ben songs or Keystone State Ultra songs. Yeah, I find myself every time that I'm not in the stadium, I'm singing songs. And with Shuttleworth giving up those 2 goals, what's a Shuttleworth? What's a Shuttleworth? So I'm curious how many people on social media, how many people on this podcast were singing their songs on when they were at their house, whether or not they were at the bar, wherever they're watching the games. How many people were singing songs? But yeah, I mean, look, 9 shots, 1 on target in the first half. I was like, great. Is this going to be the same old Union we've seen a lot of times this season where they're create a ton of chances, but can't find them back in the net. In the second half, the Union were a lot more clinical in their finishing, having 4 of their 6 shots be on target, which 2 of those shots resulted in goals. So, yeah, a lot of great adjustments by the Union to figure out how to put these shots on target, where I'm sure Jim and the team were frustrated going into the half, especially, like I said, Shuttleworth made a really good save on Corey Burke's header, and I know I was annoyed that Ali Bedoya was right there and he missed the ball. He could have put it in the back of the net. But, yeah, I can't complain, really. I really cannot complain in the second half because the Union scored 2 goals, and like I said, 4 of those 6 shots were on target, so did a lot of good things in the second half compared to what it was in the first half. And yeah, again, like I said, you look at the possession. That's really when Chicago took over in the possession in the second half. But they were down a goal, and they really had to go for it. And especially when they gave up the second goal, they had to commit numbers for it. Point number 2, Jack McGlynn looked excellent. I was surprised to see that he got the start. But then again, should I have been surprised where he looked promising? He had a chance against Atlanta in the second leg of CCL play. He's looked good in the last couple games when he's coming off the bench. Looks like a guy that's just ready. Like, that MLS isn't too big for him. And Jim Curtin sees these guys in practice every single day. And obviously, Jack McGlynn's impressing in practice because he gave him the start. He had 2 excellent chances, like we said. Should have been goals. But props to him just for getting into those positions. I know he said in his post-game press conference, he said, yeah, he was honestly surprised how much space and time that Chicago gave him for those 2 chances. Didn't think that he was going to be that unmarked, and yet there he was. But I do think, not only that, when Chicago turned the ball over poorly in their half in the first half, Jack was right there to get the ball. He was aware of his surroundings and everything. He didn't panic as soon as the ball came to him. He found Jamir Montero. And that's really, really good awareness from a 17-year-old, a dude that's the second youngest player to ever start a game for the Philadelphia Union. He didn't fold under pressure. It's really, really good of him. And then, what's he do later on in the game? He does the most veteran move that a veteran can do is, as soon as Chicago attacks, the ball breaks to the Union. He gets fouled by Frankowski. He throws his body in front of Frankowski. Frankowski fouls him. And there we go. The attack is officially dead for Chicago. That is such a veteran move. And I don't know if you guys noticed that. Go ahead and look at it. Like, for a guy that's 17 years old, that is such a high soccer IQ move. And Jack McGlynn looked great in his debut. And we'll see if he gets another start against the New England Revolution. But if you also look, Jack McGlynn, he had 5 tackles this game. Great job defensively by Jack McGlynn. And Jack McGlynn, he was 13 for 16 in completed passes with an 82% passer rating, which was second highest on the team, which on the day the Union did not pass great, and we'll talk about that in the bad section. But Jack McGlynn, for a 17-year-old to come on, make his starting debut for the Philadelphia Union, he looked like he belonged out there, and hopefully this is more good things to come for Jack McGlynn as the season goes on. But point number 3, I thought the Union were positioned really, really well. And this is something I wanted to bring up in a podcast last week or a week and a half ago. I don't know when. Look, recorded a lot of podcasts, but a friend of the show, Ed Fagan, and I were talking during the Atlanta game in Subaru Park, where he was like to me, aren't you so glad that Kai Wagner's out here instead of Matt Real? Don't you feel a lot more comfortable? I'm like, yeah, duh. Because Kai Wagner's positioning, I think that's one of the best things about Kai Wagner is he's never caught out of position. He's always at the right place at the right time to cut the angle when somebody's running at him, when they're trying to chip the ball over the back line. Kai Wagner is always right there to intercept the ball. And I think that is another thing about this team is their soccer IQ on this team is really, really high. Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, they don't spend a ton of money. Okay, great. But the players that they bring into this club, not only do they have good technical ability, but their soccer IQ is, I think, some of the highest in MLS. And I don't think you can do stats on that to show who has the highest soccer IQ, who doesn't. But I've got to imagine that the Philadelphia Union have some of the highest players in MLS that have such a high soccer IQ. And we heard it on the podcast. I played the clip to you guys a few weeks ago with Jim Curtin talking about how high Leon Flock's soccer IQ is for a 20-year-old. You can't teach that. You cannot teach that at all. And it goes such a long way. But just overall, I thought the Union's positioning was so well against Chicago. And because of that, the Union are able to keep 5 clean sheets in the last 8 games. When you get rid of Mark McKenzie, well, you sell him. Don't get rid of him. Saying get rid of him makes it seem like he was bad. You sell Mark McKenzie, who was such a key player for the Union last season, and here's the Union starting in 8 games, keeping 5 clean sheets. Yeah, it sucks that they gave up 2 goals against Inter Miami and NYCFC, and they gave up that goal against Atlanta United. But you had to keep 5 clean sheets and replace 2 players on the back line, and Ray Gaddis and Mark McKenzie. The Union are looking really well, really, really good defensively. And then point number, 5 I want to bring up is I thought the press was good. Chicago looked really slow throughout the day, which I guess isn't surprising because they have a lot of tall players on the team, which, you have tall players that are going to be slower. And like I talked about with Tyler Terrence last episode, where Chicago have the 6th youngest team in MLS, but a lot of these young guys are hurt or they really haven't played yet. And Chicago couldn't handle the press that the Union were playing on them throughout the day. And because of that, that's a key reason why the Union were able to force mistakes for Chicago in their half. That's why the Union were able to score 2 goals, because Chicago cannot handle the press. And I think this Chicago team is talented. I don't think Raphael Wicki should be sacked, but there is a growing sense that Chicago fans might want Wicki out. But how can you want a manager out where so many other players are out injured? It makes no sense to me. But 2 bad points I want to bring up is one, like I told you guys. Point number 1 is that the Union's passing was atrocious on the day. They completed 64% of their passes. And especially when they were in the final third, they only completed 52% of their passes. So things still, yes, they scored 2 goals. Yes, things got better in the second half in terms of creating chances and getting shots on target. But the passing's got to be a lot better in the final third for the Union if they want to score more goals, if they want to cause more problems in the attacking third. Where you look at the midfield, nobody other than Jack McGlynn and Jamir Montero completed over 80% of the passes. I think it was between 60 and 65% that Alabadora and Anthony Fontana and Leon Flock completed the passing rating. Was between 60 and 65%. Wasn't good. And strikers didn't have great passing. I mean, just nobody on this team really had great passing. But other than that, you really can't complain. And yeah, you can complain, right? They got to keep cooler heads, especially near the end of the game. Sergio and Glesnes, they shouldn't have picked up those yellow cards, especially Sergio Santos, man. You've got to have a cooler head. Look, I know you think that you were fouled, but he got lucky not getting a red card, having a headbutt towards the Chicago defender, where Chicago defender knew what he was doing. He was hoping to pick up a red card, and especially when the game's near the end of the game like that, where Chicago know they're out. They're going to do whatever they can to get under Philadelphia Union players' skin. And that's 2 yellow cards now for Sergio Santos, where we know yellow card accumulation comes up fast, and we don't want to lose players early on in the season. So hopefully that's something that Jim and the coaching staff and Ali Bedoya can just say, hey, look, we got to stop picking up these stupid yellow cards. We can't buy into what these teams want us to buy into. We got to have calmer heads out here on the field, especially towards the end of the games. And one thing I do want to bring up is Anthony Fontana. He was replaced by Jack McGlynn in the starting lineup, which, again, surprised that Jack McGlynn got the start, but Jim Curtin sees these guys. But what does that say about Anthony Fontana, where Jim Curtin said at the beginning of the season that, yeah, we're going to give we're going to give Anthony Fontana the keys to the number 10. Jameer's looked great as the number 10. Where, how can you pull Jamiro Montero out of the number 10 where you have Leon Flock playing so well in the number 8, but he's played well in the number 6 since Jose's been suspended? And once you bring back Jose, once Jose comes back from the yellow card suspensions, which, by the way, he's suspended for 2 more games, got to imagine that Leon Flock's going to go back to the 8, and Jose goes back to the number 6, which means that Jameer is at the 10, and where's that leave Anthony Fontana on the bench? What is the bigger thing that's going on with Anthony Fontana here? That's my question, and you have the ability to ask Jim that in press conferences, but I don't think I want to. I don't want to make Jim mad, but I know it's his job to answer questions from the media. So somebody else in the media has to ask that question. What is Jim seeing in practice from Anthony that he's not liking, where he doesn't trust Anthony yet? Look, I didn't believe into it, honestly, that much when he said, yeah, Anthony's going to get the keys to the number 10, because we've seen it over the years. For whatever reason, Jim, when it's subbing Anthony, Jim just doesn't trust Anthony. And maybe that's because Anthony doesn't put in the work defensively like we've seen Jameer Montero do at the number 8, like we've seen him do at the number 10, like we saw Brendan Aronson do last year and the year prior to that. I mean, that's what it's got to be, right? That he's not putting in the shift defensively. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense to me, but I could be wrong, right? So somebody in the media other than me needs to ask Jim that question next press conference. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on this game against the Chicago Fire. Now, real quick, I do want to go to Blunder of the Week, and hopefully I don't ramble on, but my Blunder of the Week is going to go to the fans that are selling their tickets on StubHub. Now, I want to play this clip that Jim Curtin was talking about the upcoming game in August against Club America, where he basically told Union fans, don't sell your tickets.
Yeah, look, again, I'll send out the service announcement now for our fans to do their very, very best to make sure that I'll just say it's mostly us in that stadium, because Club America fans are incredible. They're, if you want to say, Yankees, New York Yankees, Dallas Cowboys, wherever they play in the United States, they find a way to get all the tickets. As recently as the Portland game, where you saw them kind of take over in certain areas of that stadium with the flares and different things. So they travel, they are everywhere. So please do our best to, obviously they get their allotted amount of tickets that they get to come in, and we want to create a great atmosphere. And they have super fans. But let's start that now, where we do a good job making sure there's a lot more blue and gold than that bright yellow. So that would be my first request for everybody.
Stop selling your tickets to opposing fans. Look, I know there's a Facebook group that was created by Union fans for people to sell tickets so they don't get out there to opposing fans. And yes, there's still going to be people out there that, you know, are forced to buy more tickets than what they want. And they're like, okay, well, I don't want this ticket, but I'm going to go out and sell the ticket for a profit. And there's always going to be people like that. We see it when people try to buy concert tickets. We always see scalpers out there that make the prices go up 10, 20, sometimes 100% what the ticket actually costs. But especially against Club America, look, this is something, look, I haven't done an episode like this the last couple of weeks where I'm giving Blunder of the Week, talking about the good and the bad and all that. And I've wanted to talk about how unacceptable it was when the Inter Miami fans were causing a ruckus down on the opposite end of the stadium in 118, 117, where we saw a ton of NYCFC fans. We saw a good amount of Atlanta United fans. And none of these fans, except for the Atlanta United fans, there was some of them that were actually sitting in 133 where the away fans are supposed to sit. We're just seeing these guys spread around the whole stadium, though. And why is that? Why is there so many opposing fans in the stadium? It's because we have Union fans selling their tickets, not to Union fans. They're selling them on StubHub. They want to make a profit. It's like, okay, look, yeah, you were probably forced to get more tickets than what you wanted, or maybe you look at it as, I want to make a profit. There's fans that want to get into Subaru Park that want to go back to whatever normal looks like. They want to go back and see live sporting events. But when you have people that are overpricing fans, Philadelphia Union fans, pricing out their own fans, it's sickening. And you have opposing fans go on StubHub and say, look, I don't care. I want to see my team play. Where I got to imagine NYCFC fans, they look at whatever prices people are selling tickets on StubHub, and those tickets are probably cheaper than what they are at Yankee Stadium. But when Club America comes here, we saw what they did in Portland. Jim Curtin talked about it. We saw videos, you saw pictures of the flares and just how well represented Club America were in that stadium in Portland. That exact thing will happen in Subaru Park, and I hope it doesn't. And when you have the head coach saying, look, I'm asking you guys, basically saying, let's have more Union fans in our home stadium, in our home stadium. Subaru Park is our home stadium. Let's not make it more away fans than home fans. But unfortunately, people see it as a payday for them, and I don't know how to stop it. And this Facebook group is great, but there's going to be people out there that still see it as a payday, and they're going to try to make as much money as they can, unfortunately. But listen to Jim Curtin, listen to people on social media, try to get these tickets in the hands of Philadelphia Union fans as much as possible. Don't overprice Philadelphia Union fans. But that's it for this episode. If you guys haven't followed the podcast yet on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, follow at Free Kick Pod. Check out the website, thefreekickpodcast.com. Wherever you get your podcasts, The Free Kick, Todd Lewis. And next time the Union have an away game, which is against DC United, May 23rd, I believe it is, a Sunday. Hey, look, let's right after the game, let's get a big Twitter Spaces thing going, and so I can hear from you guys. But until Wednesday, until maybe Monday or Tuesday, to see if I have a preview episode or not, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.